Ironwall did not believe in gentle mornings. Dawn arrived like a disciplined formation, light cutting sharply across the fortress spires and armored ramparts that crowned the Blackstone ridges. Defense cannons rotated in slow, deliberate arcs above the capital, tracking distant signatures that rarely turned hostile but were never ignored. The air carried a metallic chill from the planetary shield grid. A faint vibration that every citizen felt, but no one commented on. On Ironwall, security was not comfort, it was identity. Trent Wolfe adjusted the magnetic seal on his gauntlet and glanced sideways at Princess Mira. "If you run again," he said calmly, "I am required to look heroic while chasing you. It's very tiring." Mira, 16 and entirely too confident for a world of orbital cannons, lifted her chin. "If you cannot keep up, perhaps we should request a faster bodyguard." "I am fast," he replied. "I am simply conserving energy in case someone attempts to assassinate you before lunch." She considered that, then grinned. "Fair point." They moved along the upper terrace of Bastion 7, one of Ironwall's outer defense fortresses. The structure rose from a cliff edge overlooking a vast expanse of industrial plains, where automated factories forged hull plating and munitions for fleets that rarely slept. Above them, shield projectors shimmered faintly against the gray sky, invisible until one looked carefully. Trent did not just look carefully, he looked constantly. He scanned rooftops, service corridors, drone traffic lanes. His ocular implant fed him overlays, heat signatures, movement patterns, energy fluctuations. Years of training had taught him that threats rarely announce themselves. They arrived disguised as routine. Princess Mira leaned against the railing and stared at the horizon. "One day," she said thoughtfully, "I will redesign all of this." "All of what?" Trent asked. She gestured broadly. "The defenses, the protocols, the endless layers of steel. We build walls around everything." "Walls are useful," he said. "So are windows," she countered. He suppressed a smile. "Your mother would say windows are vulnerabilities." "My mother says many things," Mira replied dryly. Queen Thalia was not present on this inspection tour, but her influence felt woven into every stone. Ironwall's ruler was precise, composed, and nearly impossible to surprise. Her long ears, adorned with ceremonial metal rings that signified lineage and authority, had become an emblem of stability throughout the kingdom. Trent had stood in her presence countless times. He respected her, feared her slightly, understood that she carried more weight than the fortress itself. A low rumble rolled across the sky. Trent's head snapped upward. "Storm?" Mira asked. He checked the overlay. "No atmospheric instability registered." The rumble deepened, vibrating through the terrace floor. Trent's gaze shifted toward the landing platform below. A supply transport had arrived moments earlier, its cargo manifest cleared through proper channels. Crates were already being unloaded by automated servitors. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. Mira rolled her eyes. "I am always behind you." "Yes," he replied, stepping slightly to position himself between her and the platform. "And I would like to keep it that way." Another vibration, subtle, wrong. His implant flickered with a micro-anomaly, a fluctuation in the energy field surrounding one of the cargo containers. "Princess," he said calmly, "we are going inside." She opened her mouth to protest. The first explosion erased the argument. A blast tore through the landing platform, a bloom of white-hot plasma ripping apart servitors and scattering debris across the lower courtyard. Shockwaves hammered the terrace railing. Trent moved before sound fully registered. He shoved Mira down behind the reinforced parapet just as a second container detonated, sending shards of composite metal screaming through the air. Sirens began to wail across Bastion 7. "Ambush," he muttered. Drones rose from the shattered cargo, sleek angular machines unfolding from disguised crates. Their hulls shimmered with stealth matrices as weapon ports extended. "Of course," he said under his breath. "Exploding lunch deliveries." Mira stared, eyes wide but steady. "How many?" "Too many," he replied. The first drone fired. Trent intercepted the shot with his armored forearm, the kinetic shield flaring bright as plasma struck it. Pain lanced through his arm, even through reinforced plating. He did not flinch. "Move!" he ordered. He grabbed Mira and propelled her toward the inner corridor as defense turrets activated overhead, blasting 2 drones from the sky. More poured upward from the wreckage. The terrace floor erupted beside them, shrapnel tearing through the railing. Trent pivoted, positioning himself fully between the princess and the incoming fire. A plasma bolt slammed into his shoulder. Armor cracked. He felt the heat bite through the suit and into flesh. "Trent," Mira began. "Keep moving," he said, voice tight but steady. "You are not allowed to watch this part." Another bolt struck his side, then another. His shield capacity dropped rapidly on his internal display. Reinforcements were scrambling from the lower levels, but the ambush had been timed perfectly. Shift rotation, maintenance window, minimal guard presence on the upper terrace. "Of course," he muttered. "Optimal scheduling." He fired back, pulse rounds shattering 2 advancing drones. A third slipped through and unleashed a burst at close range. 3 impacts hit his chest in rapid succession. He staggered but did not fall. Mira reached the corridor entrance and turned back despite his command. "Go!" he barked. She hesitated. He forced a grin through the pain. "I told your mother I'd return you with minimal scratches. Don't make me a liar." That did it. She disappeared into the corridor as automated blast doors slammed down behind her. Trent turned fully toward the remaining drones. His shield failed. The next hit tore through exposed armor and into muscle. He felt it, every strike. But he stepped forward instead of back. The drones recalibrated, focusing fire on him now that the princess was sealed away. Smart machines. Ruthless. "All right," he breathed. "Just you and me." He advanced through plasma fire, each step heavier than the last. His suit registered catastrophic damage. Fractured ribs, internal bleeding, neural interface instability. He kept firing. A drone lunged at close range, blade extension snapping outward. Trent caught it mid-strike, the blade slicing through his forearm plating. He twisted, slamming the machine into the terrace floor and crushing its core with his boot. Another blast hit his back. He dropped to one knee. Reinforcement cannons from the lower bastion finally roared to life, ripping through the remaining attackers in a storm of kinetic fury. The sky above Bastion 7 cleared as quickly as it had ignited. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of damaged circuitry and the distant echo of alarms. Trent tried to stand. His legs refused. He became aware of how much blood had soaked into his suit. "Unacceptable," he murmured faintly. The blast doors opened. Princess Mira ran toward him, escorted by armored guards. "Trent!" she cried. He managed to look up at her, vision blurring at the edges. "You're safe?" he asked. "Yes." "Good." He attempted another smile. It came out crooked. "Tell your mother," he said softly, "that the lunch delivery was disappointing." Then the world tilted, and Ironwall's most stubborn bodyguard fell at last. The Royal Infirmary did not panic. It intensified. White light flooded the central chamber as med drones descended in disciplined formation around Trent's broken body. Armor was cut away in sections, magnetic seals disengaged, fragments of composite plating falling to the floor with hollow metallic sounds. Beneath it, the damage was worse than even the first scan suggested. "Multiple plasma penetrations," a medic announced. "Severe thoracic trauma, neural interface destabilizing. Nanny deployment at maximum saturation," another responded. Princess Mira stood just beyond the threshold, hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned pale. She had never seen him still before. Even in rest, Trent had carried an alertness like a coiled wire. Now he lay suspended in a gravitic cradle, body partially encased in regeneration gel, eyes closed, skin pale beneath streaks of dried blood. "Is he?" she began. "He is alive," the chief medic said firmly, though the hesitation before the final word lingered. Mira nodded once, swallowing hard. The doors parted again. Queen Thalia entered without haste. Conversations stilled automatically. Medics continued their work, but every movement carried new precision under her presence. She approached the cradle and looked down at Trent Wolfe. He no longer resembled the unshakable guardian who had stood at her daughter's side that morning. Tubes ran along his arms. Nanite injectors pulsed rhythmically at the base of his neck. A containment field shimmered faintly over his torso, where internal damage was most severe. How long? She asked. 32 minutes since extraction, the chief medic replied. He sustained at least 12 direct plasma impacts. His shield collapsed early. He continued advancing, despite systemic failure. Mira's voice was small but steady. He told me not to watch. Thalia did not look away from Trent. He would. The queen's long ears, usually adorned with iron rings engraved with ancestral sigils, were bare. The absence was subtle, but in Iron Wall tradition it meant something unmistakable. Personal vigil. Stabilization probability? She asked. The medic hesitated. 40%. Mira inhaled sharply. Thalia did not react outwardly. Begin full-spectrum regenerative protocol, she said. Authorize bloodline tier nanite reserves. The medic blinked. Your Majesty, those reserves are allocated for... I am aware of their allocation, she replied calmly. Reallocate. Orders moved instantly through the chamber. Specialized nanites, designed for royal physiology, were integrated into the existing repair swarm. They adapted quickly to Trent's human biology, weaving through damaged tissue, reinforcing neural pathways, reconstructing fractured bone. On the far wall, a projection displayed a dynamic model of his body, sections glowing red where trauma remained critical. Mira stepped closer, though she did not cross the marked boundary around the cradle. Mother, she said quietly, you have counsel in 1 hour. Thalia's gaze did not shift. Reschedule. They will argue. They always do. The medic adjusted the containment field as Trent's heart rhythm fluctuated dangerously. He is resisting sedation spikes, the medic reported. Thalia's eyes flickered briefly. He dislikes losing control. Mira almost laughed despite herself. He once argued with a sleep cycle alarm. The faintest hint of amusement touched Thalia's expression. Stubborn, she said. Yes, Mira replied. Extremely. Minutes stretched into an hour. Regeneration gel darkened as damaged cells were purged and replaced. Fractured ribs knitted slowly under nanite guidance. Internal bleeding reduced to manageable levels. Yet the neural interface, implanted during Trent's military service, remained unstable, sparks of interference flickering across the projection. Neural cascade risk, a technician warned. If the interface collapses... It will not, Thalia said, her tone leaving no space for alternatives. Mira watched her mother carefully. The queen's posture remained perfect, shoulders aligned, chin lifted slightly, but her hands rested lightly on the edge of the cradle, fingers brushing the metal surface as though grounding herself. Why did he keep advancing? Mira asked quietly. Thalia answered without hesitation. Because retreat would have exposed you. He had already taken hits. Yes. Mira looked back at Trent, at the network of tubes and shimmering fields keeping him alive. I told him I would redesign the fortress someday, she murmured. He said walls were useful. And windows, Thalia added softly. Mira glanced at her, surprised. I heard, the queen said. A sudden spike in Trent's vitals cut through the quiet. His body arched slightly against the gravitic restraints as neural feedback surged. The containment field flared. Sedation increase, the chief medic ordered. Thalia stepped closer despite the warning indicators. Trent Wolfe, she said evenly, voice carrying authority honed by decades of command. You are not permitted to die. The medics froze for half a second, startled by the directness. Your princess remains unharmed, she continued. Your duty is fulfilled. You will now rest. The neural spike gradually subsided. His heart rate stabilized. Mira stared. Did you just order him not to die? Yes, Thalia replied. Does that usually work? It has not failed yet. Despite the tension, Mira let out a shaky laugh. Hours passed. Advisors sent discreet messages requesting the Queen's presence in council chambers. Reports of the ambush investigation demanded review. Strategic responses required authorization. Each request was declined. By the 4th hour, whispers had begun circulating beyond the infirmary walls. The Queen had not left the bodyguard's side. Inside, the light dimmed slightly as the regeneration cycle entered its deeper phase. Nanites worked beneath the surface now, invisible but relentless. Trent's face, though pale, had lost some of its earlier ashen hue. He may not regain full motor function, a medic said cautiously. Thalia regarded the projection. He will. Your Majesty, He will. Mira moved to the other side of the cradle, studying the faint lines of scar tissue already forming beneath the regeneration gel. He'll complain about the scars, she said softly. He will consider them decoration, Thalia replied. Another faint twitch crossed Trent's fingers. Mira leaned forward instinctively. Did you see that? Reflex, the medic said. Thalia did not answer. She watched his hand carefully. Night fell outside the fortress, though inside the infirmary the light remained steady and artificial. At last, Mira yawned involuntarily. Go rest, Thalia said gently. I don't want to. You must. Mira hesitated, then nodded. She stepped closer to Trent and placed her hand lightly against the edge of the cradle. You are not allowed to miss my coronation someday, she whispered. It would be inconvenient. Thalia's lips curved faintly. When Mira left, the chamber felt larger, quieter. The queen remained. She removed her ceremonial rings entirely and set them on the nearby table, the soft metallic sound almost echoing in the sterile space. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to sit without the rigid posture of a ruler. She studied Trent's face. You have complicated my schedule, she said softly. The machines continued their steady rhythm. Outside, Ironwall's cannons rotated against the gray sky, vigilant as ever. Inside the infirmary, the queen kept watch, and she did not leave. By the second day, Ironwall had divided itself into two distinct realities. In the upper citadel, council chambers burned with quiet fury. Generals argued over security failures. Intelligence officers projected holographic models of the ambush drones, dissecting their construction down to molecular composition. Political advisors whispered about implications, succession risks, public perception. Words like retaliation and preemptive strike floated through the air like sharpened blades. In the royal infirmary, there was only the steady hum of machines and the measured rhythm of one stubborn human heart refusing to surrender. Queen Thalia had not left. She stood near the med cradle as new data scrolled across translucent displays. Regeneration percentages crept upward by fractional increments. Internal bleeding had been fully contained. Bone density stabilization was approaching acceptable thresholds, but the neural interface embedded at the base of Trent's skull continued to flicker unpredictably, its integration with Ironwall's advanced nanites not entirely harmonious. He is fighting the repair process, the chief medic observed carefully. He would, Thalia replied. Mira entered quietly, her boots barely making a sound against the polished floor. She carried a small tablet clutched tightly in her hands. They are arguing again, she said. About? Thalia asked without turning. About everything, Mira answered. Whether humans should hold defensive posts this close to the royal line, whether this was an internal breach, whether the outer provinces are secure. Thalia finally shifted her gaze toward her daughter. And what do you think? Mira glanced at Trent's still form. I think if they remove him from his post, I will remove them from theirs. The queen's lips curved faintly. That would create paperwork. I dislike paperwork, Mira said solemnly. Then we are aligned. A faint ripple crossed the med field as Trent's heart rate spiked momentarily. The monitors responded with a soft alarm tone before stabilizing again. Mira stepped closer. Is he dreaming? Likely, the medic replied. Neural recovery triggers fragmented memory sequences. What kind of memories, she asked. Combat, most often. Thalia's eyes lingered on Trent's face. His brow tightened slightly, as though reliving something distant and unwelcome. He once told me, Mira said quietly, that fear is not the enemy. Panic is. That sounds like him, Thalia said. The infirmary doors parted, admitting General Kalor. His armor was immaculate despite the chaos beyond these walls. He bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, he said, the council requires your presence. I am present, Thalia replied. In the chamber, Your Majesty. Reschedule. Kalor hesitated. With respect, the attack demands immediate strategic response. And you are capable of drafting preliminary strategy without my supervision, she said evenly. Certainly, but the optics are secondary. Kalor's gaze flicked briefly toward the med cradle. It is irregular, he said carefully, for the queen to remain personally in vigil for a single guard. Thalia's posture did not change. He is not a single guard, she said. He is human, Kalor added. Yes, she replied. The silence that followed was heavy but controlled. Mira crossed her arms. He is also the reason I am not dead. Kalor inclined his head slightly. That is acknowledged. Then let it remain acknowledged, Thalia said. The council may wait. Kalor studied her for a moment longer, then bowed and withdrew. Mira exhaled dramatically. They always look as though they are swallowing metal. They often are, Thalia replied dryly. Another fluctuation rippled across the neural monitor, a sharp spike. The containment field brightened. Neural cascade, the medic warned. Interface instability escalating. Trent's body tensed violently against the cradle restraints. His hand twitched, fingers curling as if grasping something unseen. Thalia stepped forward without hesitation. Stabilization Protocol Alpha, the medic called out. Increase nanite density around cortical bridge. The projection on the wall displayed a chaotic pattern of neural sparks, memories firing uncontrollably. Trent Wolfe, Thalia said firmly, voice cutting through the sterile air. You are in the Royal Infirmary. The ambush has ended. His jaw tightened. Princess Mira is unharmed, she continued. The spike hesitated. You are not required to fight. The chaotic pattern began to slow. The medic blinked in surprise. He is responding to external stimuli. Mira leaned forward slightly. He listens even when unconscious, she whispered. Thalia did not look at her daughter. She kept her eyes on Trent. You have done enough, she said quietly. The neural pattern stabilized. The room exhaled collectively. After several minutes, the med field dimmed back to its normal glow. The chief medic wiped a thin sheen of perspiration from his forehead. He nearly crossed the threshold. But he did not, Thalia said. No. Mira tilted her head slightly. He hates losing. That is becoming apparent, the medic replied. Hours later, when the infirmary settled once more into steady quiet, Thalia allowed herself to sit beside the cradle again. She studied the faint lines of new scar tissue forming beneath the gel, the subtle tension that remained in his features, even in sedation. You are inconvenient, she murmured softly. His heart rate shifted minutely. She considered that. You disrupted my schedule, my counsel, my assumptions. Silence answered her. You chose my daughter's life without hesitation, she continued. You did not calculate political advantage. The monitors glowed steadily. I have ruled for 23 years, she said quietly. I have learned to weigh loyalty as currency, to measure devotion in treaties and oaths. She leaned slightly closer. You did not measure. A faint movement flickered across his eyelids. Mira, who had dozed in a nearby chair, stirred and looked up. Did he move? Reflex, the medic began. But before he could finish, Trent's fingers twitched again, this time more deliberately. His eyelids fluttered once, then stilled. The room froze. Minimal consciousness activity, the medic whispered. It is early. Thalia rose to her feet slowly. Trent Wolfe, she said, voice steady but lower now. If you intend to wake, choose a moment when you can speak. I dislike one-sided conversations. Mira covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. The neural monitor registered a faint but unmistakable increase in cortical coherence. He hears you, Mira said. Yes, Thalia replied softly. He does. Outside, Ironwall's storm-gray sky remained unchanged, fortress cannons rotating with mechanical patience. Inside the infirmary, something far less mechanical was unfolding. The council could debate strategies. Generals could draft retaliation plans. Political factions could whisper about humans and heritage and propriety. None of that altered the simple truth reflected in the steady pulse on the monitor. He had stood between plasma fire and a princess. He had received wound after wound without retreat, and the Queen of Ironwall had not left his side. On the third night, when even the med drones moved more quietly, Trent's breathing shifted, not erratic, not failing, but rising, like someone approaching the surface from a long, dark depth. By the fourth day, exhaustion had begun to show in the smallest details. Not in the medics. They rotated in precise shifts, professional and contained. Not in the drones, they never tired, their metallic limbs gliding tirelessly between consoles and containment fields. It showed in Queen Thalia, the faint shadow beneath her eyes. the stillness that lingered a fraction longer than usual before she answered a question. The way her long ears, usually held at an imperceptibly alert angle, now rested slightly lower. Princess Mira noticed. "You should sleep," she said, standing near the med cradle with her arms folded in a way that suggested she believed herself very authoritative. "I will," Thalia replied. "You said that yesterday, and I was accurate." "You did not." I rested my eyes. "For 8 seconds." Thalia glanced at her daughter. "Your observational skills are improving." "I learned from him," Mira said, nodding toward Trent. The man in question lay suspended in the regeneration field, his body now almost fully reconstructed. The worst of the plasma burns had faded into new skin. Bone density had stabilized. Organ regeneration had progressed beyond critical stages. Only one red marker remained on the projection. Neural interface instability. The implant at the base of Trent's skull had fused too deeply with his original military augmentations. Ironwall's nanites, though advanced, were optimized for native physiology. They repaired with precision, but they did not always understand. "His cortical bridge is misfiring intermittently," the chief medic explained, hands hovering over a holographic neural map. "Microsurges. If they cascade, we risk permanent damage." "Remove the implant," Mira said immediately. The medic hesitated. "It is integrated into his motor cortex." "So?" she insisted. "So removal could result in paralysis." Silence settled. Thalia stepped forward. "What alternatives?" she asked. "We can attempt a harmonization procedure," the medic said. "Integrate a royal biocircuit to stabilize signal flow." Mira blinked. "That's what you use for—" "Yes," Thalia replied. Royal biocircuits were rare. Infused with the biosignature of Ironwall's ruling bloodline, they enhanced resilience and neural coherence in ways ordinary augmentation could not replicate. "They are not designed for human physiology," the medic cautioned. "Neither was plasma fire," Thalia said calmly. "He endured that." Mira's eyes flicked between her mother and the projection. "Will it hurt?" "He will be unconscious," the medic answered. "That was not the question," Mira said. The medic glanced at the Queen. "It will stress his system," he admitted. Thalia studied the neural map in silence for a long moment. "Proceed," she said. The infirmary shifted into controlled urgency. Additional med drones descended, deploying fine filament connectors along Trent's spine and temples. The regeneration field brightened, isolating the cranial region. The neural projection expanded, revealing thousands of branching pathways glowing in complex patterns. Thalia removed one of the rings from the table beside her, an unadorned band forged from Ironwall's core alloy. Embedded within it was the dormant royal biocircuit. The medic extended his hand. She did not immediately release it. "You understand," she said quietly, "that if this fails, the responsibility is mine." "Yes, Your Majesty." She handed him the ring. Mira stepped closer to the cradle, her fingers gripping the edge. "Trent," she said softly, "this is the part where you would tell me not to worry." The harmonization sequence began. The biocircuit activated, a faint pulse of deep blue light spreading from the ring into the neural connectors. The projection on the wall shifted, new pathways overlaying old ones. For a moment, everything aligned beautifully. Signal coherence rose. Cortical interference dropped. Then the surge hit. Trent's body arched violently against the restraints as the foreign circuit met resistance from his original implant. Warning tones filled the chamber. "Stabilize!" the medic shouted. "Neural feedback exceeding tolerance." The projection erupted in chaotic light, pathways flashing erratically. Mira flinched. Thalia stepped directly to the side of the cradle despite the warning field. "Reduce external stimulus," she ordered. "Let the circuits negotiate." "Your Majesty." "Now." The medics complied, lowering auxiliary nanite density and allowing the biocircuit and implant to interface directly. The chaotic flashes slowed, then spiked again. Trent's jaw clenched visibly. A faint sound escaped him, barely more than a breath. Mira's eyes widened. "He feels that." Thalia placed her hand lightly against his forearm. "Trent Wolfe," she said, her voice no longer the voice of command but something steadier. "You are not in combat." The neural spikes hesitated. "You are not required to advance." The projection flickered, unstable but slowing. "You may stand down." The chaotic surges diminished incrementally. The blue of the royal biocircuit began weaving through the red instability markers, stabilizing them in measured pulses. Integration at 40%, the medic whispered. Trent's breathing, which had been rapid and strained, began to even out. 60%. Mira let out a shaky breath. 80. The projection shifted from violent flashes to controlled luminescence. Pathways aligned, signals synchronized. Integration complete, the medic announced. Silence fell except for the steady hum of the regeneration field. Trent's body relaxed fully against the cradle restraints. Thalia did not remove her hand. Mira stared at the projection. Did it work? The medic studied the data carefully. Cortical coherence restored. Interface harmonized with royal biocircuit. So he's stable. Mira exhaled dramatically. He owes us for this. Thalia's lips curved faintly. He will argue the opposite. Hours passed without further incident. The neural projection now glowed in balanced tones, no longer fractured by chaotic interference. The royal biocircuit pulsed gently within the network, reinforcing connections rather than overwhelming them. When the medics finally stepped back to allow the system to run autonomously, the infirmary quieted again. Mira slumped into a nearby chair. I am never becoming queen, she declared. That is unlikely, Thalia replied. This is exhausting. Yes. Mira glanced toward her mother. You could have let him go. Thalia did not answer immediately. Yes, she said at last. But you didn't. No. Mira studied her carefully. Is this about duty? Thalia looked at Trent's face, at the faint new scars tracing across his skin, at the stubborn set of his jaw, even in unconsciousness. No, she said quietly. Mira did not press further. Outside, Ironwall's gray horizon darkened into evening once more. Defense cannons rotated, shield arrays shimmered. The fortress world remained vigilant, unyielding. Inside the infirmary, however, something had shifted. Trent's vital signs strengthened gradually through the night. Neural coherence held steady. The biocircuit and implant functioned as one system now, an unlikely fusion of human resilience and royal technology. On the fourth night, just before the artificial lights dimmed into rest cycle mode, his fingers moved again. This time not a reflex, not a spasm, a deliberate tightening. Thalia saw it. She leaned closer. Trent Wolfe, she said softly, if you intend to wake, do so soon. I am running out of arguments to postpone counsel. His eyelids trembled faintly. Mira leaned forward eagerly. If he wakes now, I am telling him you ordered him not to die. Thalia's voice remained composed. I did. Mira smiled faintly. He will enjoy that. The neural monitor displayed a subtle but unmistakable change. Consciousness was approaching. And for the first time since the ambush, the balance between life and loss no longer felt fragile. It felt possible. Trent returned to the world in fragments. First came sound, a low mechanical hum, steady and distant, like the inside of a ship's engine room. Then came weight, not crushing but present, pressing gently against every limb. After that came light, filtered and soft, bleeding through closed eyelids. He attempted to inhale deeply and immediately regretted it. Ah, he murmured faintly, though the sound barely escaped. Somewhere nearby, a chair shifted. You see, Princess Mira's voice whispered urgently. I told you. Lower your volume, came Queen Thalia's calm reply. He is not a public address system. Trent frowned or tried to. His face did not fully cooperate. He opened his eyes. The ceiling of the royal infirmary greeted him. White, immaculate, entirely too official. He blinked slowly. The world swam into focus. Tubes, light panels, a faint blue shimmer above him. He turned his head an inch. That was a mistake. Pain surged in protest, not sharp but deep, like a reminder carved into muscle and bone. Do not attempt heroics, Thalia said evenly from beside him. He blinked again, certain he was hallucinating. The Queen of Ironwall stood at his bedside, posture composed, long ears unadorned, eyes fixed steadily on him. You are not real, he muttered faintly. Mira leaned into his field of vision. He thinks you are imaginary. That is unfortunate, Thalia replied. I have postponed 3 councils. Trent attempted to lift his hand. It rose halfway before trembling and falling back. He squinted at it suspiciously. This feels excessive. You received multiple plasma impacts, the chief medic said from somewhere to the left. Your survival is statistically improbable. Trent exhaled slowly. I dislike improbable. Mira grinned. You also dislike dying, apparently. He turned his head a fraction toward her. I try to avoid it. Thalia stepped closer, studying his face carefully. You have been unconscious for 7 days, she said. He processed that. I missed breakfast. 7 of them, Mira confirmed. That is unacceptable. A faint flicker of amusement crossed Thalia's features. You may lodge a formal complaint once you can stand, she said. He tried to sit up. Every muscle objected. Negative, he muttered, collapsing back into the med cradle. Standing is temporarily postponed. The medic adjusted the containment field slightly. Your neural interface has been harmonized with a royal biocircuit. Trent blinked slowly. That sounds expensive. It was, Thalia replied. He stared at her, struggling to assemble memory through lingering fog. The ambush, he said quietly. Contained, she answered. The princess? Mira straightened proudly. Unharmed, because you are dramatic. He relaxed fractionally at that. Good, he murmured. Silence lingered. Not uncomfortable, but full. He became aware of something else beneath the physical ache, a subtle steadiness in his thoughts, a clarity he had not possessed before. What did you do to my head? He asked cautiously. Thalia tilted her head slightly. We stabilized it. With what? Royal technology. He stared at her for a long moment. Am I nobility now? He asked weakly. Mira laughed outright. No, Thalia said calmly. You remain insubordinate. Good, he breathed. I would not know how to attend banquets properly. The medic suppressed a smile. Trent turned his head carefully again, focusing on the queen. You stayed, he said quietly. It was not a question. Yes, she replied. For how long? Since your arrival. He frowned faintly. You have a kingdom. It remains intact. That was not the question. Mira looked between them curiously. Thalia's gaze did not waver. You stood between plasma fire and my daughter. He shrugged slightly, immediately regretting the motion. That is my function. That is not the word I would choose, she said. He met her eyes. In them he saw exhaustion, yes, but also something steadier. Something that had not been there before the ambush. I would do it again, he said simply. I am aware. The room quieted. Outside the infirmary, faint vibrations from Ironwall's defense grid echoed distantly, as constant and unyielding as ever. Trent became aware of the dozens of faint scars tracing his arms and chest beneath the regeneration gel. He glanced down. This is going to look impressive, he observed. You nearly died, Mira said. Yes, he replied, but I did not. That is important. The medic stepped forward. Motor function assessment. He handed Trent a small hollow emitter. Squeeze. Trent attempted to grip it. His fingers trembled but closed. Acceptable response, the medic said. Acceptable? Trent muttered. I prefer exceptional. Recover first, Thalia said. He studied her again. You did not leave, he repeated softly. No. Why? The question hung in the air, simple but unguarded. Mira pretended to examine a nearby console very intently. Thalia answered without evasion. Because some acts are not transactional. He considered that through lingering haze. You do not owe me, he said. I did not remain out of debt, she replied. He watched her carefully. Then why? For a moment, the Queen of Ironwall did not look like a ruler issuing decrees or calculating political balance. She looked like a mother who had nearly lost something irreplaceable. You reminded me, she said quietly, that devotion chosen freely is stronger than obedience commanded. He held her gaze. I was doing my job. You were doing more than that. Mira cleared her throat dramatically. If you both intend to exchange philosophical revelations, I would like to be included. Trent smiled faintly despite the pain. You are alive. That was the objective. Yes, she replied, but I dislike watching people collect wounds on my behalf. He raised an eyebrow weakly. You could try being less interesting. I am royalty, she said solemnly. It is not permitted. Thalia almost laughed. The medics completed their preliminary assessments and gradually reduced the intensity of the regeneration field. The cradle lowered slightly, bringing Trent closer to upright. The movement made him wince. You are not cleared for mobility, the medic warned. I gathered, he muttered. Mira stepped closer to his bedside. When you are allowed to walk again, I am redesigning Bastion 7's inspection protocols. That sounds ominous, he said. It is. Thalia folded her hands lightly behind her back. Rest, she instructed. He hesitated. Your Majesty, he said quietly. Yes? If I compromised operational security by absorbing too much fire? Mira stared at him incredulously. Thalia's expression shifted into something almost dangerous. You will not apologize for surviving, she said. He blinked. I was merely reviewing performance metrics. You exceeded them, she replied. He seemed to consider that. Acceptable, he murmured faintly. Fatigue began creeping back into his features. The neural harmonization had stabilized him, but full consciousness still required energy he did not yet possess. His eyelids grew heavier. Sleep, Thalia said gently. He looked at her one last time before drifting. You're still here, he murmured. Yes. That is statistically improbable. Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. Get used to it. His eyes closed. The monitors showed steady, stable rhythms. Mira exhaled slowly. He is going to be unbearable when he can stand. Yes, Thalia replied. But alive, Mira added. Yes. Outside, Ironwall's gray horizon stretched beneath rotating cannons and shimmering shields. Inside the infirmary, the Queen resumed her vigil, not because she was required to, but because she chose to remain. Recovery on Ironwall was never gentle. It was structured, measured, and mildly insulting to anyone who believed themselves durable. Trent discovered this on the 9th day, when the med cradle finally released its containment field and allowed him to stand. Slowly, the chief medic instructed. I am always slow, Trent replied. That is untrue, Princess Mira said from the corner of the infirmary. You ran directly into plasma fire. That was efficient, he corrected. He swung his legs over the edge of the cradle and placed his boots carefully on the polished floor. The sensation was foreign. Gravity felt heavier than he remembered, as if Ironwall itself had grown impatient with him. He rose. His knees disagreed. His vision narrowed briefly. A stabilizing arm from a nearby med drone extended automatically. I did not request assistance, he muttered. It did not request your approval, the medic replied calmly. Queen Thalia stood a short distance away, observing without interference. She had resumed limited council attendance in the days since his awakening, but her presence in the infirmary remained consistent. Trent straightened fully. The world steadied. Acceptable, he declared. The medic examined the neural interface readings projected above his shoulder. The royal biocircuit pulsed in synchronized rhythm with his implant, a faint lattice of blue interwoven with the original military augmentation. You are integrating well, the medic said. Define well. You are not collapsing. Ah, he nodded. Promising. Mira approached him cautiously, as if testing whether he might disintegrate if startled. You look different, she said. I am full of advanced royal technology, he replied. It has refined me. You are still insufferable. That is also refined. Thalia stepped closer. How do you feel? She asked. He considered the question seriously. As though I was struck repeatedly by concentrated stellar energy, he answered. But functional. Her eyes studied him carefully. Not just posture or balance, but something deeper. You will not return to active duty immediately, she said. He hesitated. Respectfully, no, she interrupted evenly. Mira tried to suppress a grin. You sustained catastrophic trauma, Thalia continued. Your body requires full recalibration. My recalibration involves standing near the princess, he replied. It currently involves walking, she said. He exhaled faintly. Very well. They began with measured steps across the infirmary floor. Each movement tested the repaired bone, the reinforced neural pathways. The royal biocircuit responded subtly, smoothing motor signals before they misfired. After 3 careful strides, he stopped. Impressive, Mira said. I am pacing myself, he replied. Outside the infirmary, Ironwall buzzed with renewed tension. Investigations into the ambush had yielded disturbing results. The drones had not originated from external invaders. Their components traced back to a rival noble faction within Ironwall's outer provinces, one quietly advocating for harsher succession protocols. In the council chamber, heated debates escalated daily. Now, for the first time since the attack, Thalia escorted Trent there. The chamber fell silent as they entered. Generals, advisors, nobles, all turned toward the man who had nearly died protecting the heir. Whispers moved through the room like wind through steel corridors. He stands, someone murmured. Barely, Trent replied quietly. Mira stifled a laugh. Thalia took her place at the head of the chamber. Trent remained to one side, not behind Mira, not in full guard stance, but present. The investigation concludes, Thalia said evenly. The ambush was orchestrated by House Valor's extremist bloc. Their objective was destabilization of succession. Murmurs erupted. They are detained, she continued. Their command assets seized. A senior noble rose. Your Majesty, this would not have occurred had succession remained purely of Ironwall blood. Silence sharpened. Trent's posture did not change, but his focus narrowed. Mira stiffened. Thalia's gaze fixed on the noble. You suggest, she said calmly, that my daughter's safety was compromised by her guardian's origin. The noble hesitated. I suggest, he amended carefully, that human integration introduces variables. Trent almost sighed. Correct, he said mildly. I am a variable. The chamber shifted in surprise at his interjection. I advanced toward plasma fire when your automated turrets recalibrated, he continued evenly. That was a variable. No one responded immediately. Mira crossed her arms. A very useful one. Thalia's voice remained controlled, but something beneath it had changed since the ambush. Less restrained, more decisive. Ironwall's strength, she said, is not derived from isolation. It is derived from loyalty. She glanced briefly toward Trent. Loyalty freely given, she added. The noble lowered his gaze. The council quieted. Outside the chamber, Ironwall's defense cannons rotated beneath the gray sky. Stability returned, not by fear, but by clarity. Later that evening, on the high balcony overlooking the industrial plains, Trent leaned against the railing cautiously. Mira stood beside him, helmet tucked beneath her arm. You embarrassed half the council, she said. I answered a question. They dislike being answered. Noted. She studied him carefully. You could leave. He glanced at her. You have survived something most do not, she continued. You could retire, demand estates, titles. He snorted softly. I do not garden. Some estates have gardens. I would ruin them. She smiled faintly. You stayed, she said. Yes. Why? He looked out across Ironwall's horizon, at shield arrays glowing faintly in the distance, at transport ships ascending through layered defense grids. Because you still need someone to complain about your inspection routes, he replied. She rolled her eyes. Queen Thalia approached quietly, long ears catching the evening wind. The council is resolved, she said. Resolved sounds temporary, Trent replied. It is. He nodded. She studied him in the fading light. You may resume limited duty within 2 cycles, she said. He blinked. Limited? Yes. That is restrictive. You are not invincible. I am aware, he admitted. Silence stretched comfortably between them. The gray sky above Ironwall softened slightly as dusk deepened. You altered my calculations, Thalia said quietly. He glanced at her. I once believed devotion was secured through structure, she continued, through oath and consequence. And now? He asked. She met his gaze steadily. Now I understand it is chosen. He considered that. I did not act for reward, he said. I know. And I do not expect one. I know. Mira looked between them, slightly exasperated. You are both exhausting, she declared. They almost laughed at the same time. For the first time since the ambush, Ironwall felt steady. Not merely defended, but anchored. Trent straightened slightly, though fatigue still traced his movements. Princess, he said lightly, shall we resume inspection routes? Mira grinned. Yes, she replied, but no more plasma. I will attempt to limit it, he said. Talia watched them as they moved along the balcony, not as ruler evaluating subordinates, but as a woman who had nearly lost something irreplaceable and had chosen not to step away. The fortress world remained iron and steel in vigilance, but something within its highest tower had shifted. Not weakness, not softness, something stronger. And this time, it was chosen. Ironwall did not celebrate loudly. It recalibrated. The arrest of House Valor's extremist leaders had rippled through the outer provinces with the quiet force of orbital gravity. Their command codes were revoked, their private fleets impounded, their rhetoric dissected in council chambers until even their allies found little worth defending. Stability returned not through spectacle, but through deliberate correction. On the high observation platform overlooking Bastion 7, the same terrace where plasma fire had once carved light into stone, Trent Wolfe stood upright without assistance. The scars were visible now, thin, pale lines traced across his neck and along his forearms where armor had failed. Beneath his collar, faint patterns of newly regenerated tissue marked where energy had torn through muscle. The royal biocircuit integrated at the base of his skull pulsed quietly, invisible but present, a subtle reinforcement of neural pathways that no longer faltered. Princess Mira leaned against the railing beside him. "You walk straighter," she observed. "I was informed my posture reflects on the crown," he replied. "It does. Then I will attempt to look majestic." "You look mildly irritated." "That is close enough." She laughed softly. Below them, Ironwall's industrial planes shimmered under a filtered sun. Defense cannons rotated with patient inevitability. Shield arrays hummed like distant thunder. Life had resumed its rhythm, but something in that rhythm had changed. Queen Thalia joined them moments later, her steps measured, her long ears once again adorned with the iron rings of lineage and command. They caught the light as she moved, a reminder that vigilance and authority had not diminished. She stopped beside Trent. "You are cleared for full duty," she said. He inclined his head slightly. "I am prepared." "I expect fewer plasma impact," she added. "I will negotiate with incoming fire," he replied evenly. Mira rolled her eyes. "He cannot negotiate." "I am surprisingly persuasive," he said. Thalia's lips curved faintly. The ambush investigation had concluded. The extremist bloc within House Valor had sought to provoke instability, hoping to undermine Mira's succession by framing human integration as weakness. They had underestimated the response. They had also underestimated the bodyguard who would not fall until the air was beyond reach. Trent glanced toward the far end of the terrace where reconstruction teams had repaired scorched stone and reinforced railing. Only faint discoloration remained where the first explosion had erupted. "You rebuilt quickly," he observed. "Ironwall does not dwell," Thalia replied. "No," he agreed. "It adapts." She studied him carefully. "And so do you," she said. He considered that. "I was trained to absorb impact," he answered. "That is not what I mean." Silence lingered between them. Mira, sensing the shift, stepped aside deliberately, pretending sudden fascination with a nearby defense drone. Thalia faced Trent fully. "When you stood between Mira and that fire," she said quietly, "you did not calculate survival probability. No. You did not weigh political consequence. No. You chose." "Yes." Her gaze did not waver. "I have ruled Ironwall through precision," she continued, "through calculation, through controlled distance. And that has kept it intact," he said. "It has," she agreed. "But I had forgotten something." He waited. "That devotion cannot be commanded. It can only be reciprocated." He held her eyes steadily. "I did not expect reciprocity," he said. "I know." The wind shifted gently across the terrace, carrying the distant hum of transport engines. "Your vigil," he said carefully, "was unnecessary." "It was chosen," she replied. He absorbed that. "You postponed council," he said. "Yes." "You diverted royal biocircuits." "Yes." "You defied precedent." "Yes." He nodded once. "Unusual behavior." "For me," she said. A faint smile touched his expression. "Statistically improbable," he murmured. She allowed herself the smallest laugh. Below them, a squadron of defense fighters ascended from the lower hangars, streaking across the gray sky in disciplined formation. Mira returned to their side. The outer provinces have acknowledged the ruling, she said. House Valor's remaining supporters have withdrawn objections. Good, Thalia replied. They are afraid, Mira added. They should be, Trent said quietly. Thalia shook her head slightly. No, she said. They should understand. Mira looked between them thoughtfully. You both speak as though this was inevitable, she said. It was not, Trent replied. Then what was it? He considered the question. Choice, he said. Thalia nodded. Choice, she echoed. Later that evening, the three of them stood before the assembled council, not in crisis, not in emergency, in acknowledgement. Thalia addressed the chamber with calm authority. Iron Wall was tested, she said, not by external invasion, but by internal fear. Her long ears caught the chamber lights as she turned slightly. We responded not with division, but with clarity. She gestured toward Trent. Loyalty does not weaken us, she continued. It strengthens us. Murmurs moved through the chamber, not dissent this time, but agreement. Trent stood without ornament, without elevated rank. No new title adorned him, no ceremonial blade was presented, and yet the shift in the room was undeniable. Respect had altered its angle. After the session adjourned, Mira lingered behind. You could accept a title, she said to him quietly. Knight Commander, Guardian of the Air, something dramatic. He shook his head faintly. I prefer my current designation. Which is? Standing where required. She studied him carefully. You are different, she said. Yes. How? He looked toward the far wall where Iron Wall's crest hung in iron relief. I once believed duty was sufficient, he said. Now I understand it is not the end of the equation. What is? He glanced toward the doorway where Thalia paused, waiting. Connection, he answered. Mira smiled slowly. That is inconvenient, she said. Yes, he agreed. On the balcony once more, beneath a sky that never quite softened, Thalia and Trent stood side by side. The fortress world extended outward. Steel, stone, vigilance. You will not leave Ironwall, she said quietly. It was not command. No, he replied, and not because of obligation. No. Why then? He met her gaze steadily. Because some structures are worth defending, he said. Not for their walls, for what they hold. The wind lifted slightly, stirring the metal rings along her ears. And what does Ironwall hold? She asked. He looked toward the inner courtyard, where Mira spoke animatedly with a squadron commander. Future, he said. She considered that for a long moment. I had grown accustomed to command, she said softly, to the idea that devotion was secured by position. And now? Now I know it must be answered. He inclined his head. The defense cannons rotated once more, silent and steady. Below, Ironwall's people moved through their routines. Engineers, soldiers, citizens unaware of how close their world had come to fracture. Thalia extended her hand, not in decree, not in ceremony, in acknowledgement. Trent took it firmly, not as subject to sovereign, not as debtor to ruler, but as one who had chosen and been chosen in return. Ironwall remained iron. Its sky remained gray. Its cannons remained vigilant. But within its highest tower, something stronger than steel had settled into place. And this time, it did not stand because it was commanded. It stood because it was chosen.